Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for Friday, March 2nd, 2018. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. We really have not found a low just yet in the ES. We've been continuing lower for the most part, and in the previous session, we really could not find much support at all. This has been something that continues to happen today, really, poking at new lows, trying to test to see where that support level is, but we really haven't seen much of a rejection yet. And whenever you fail to see rejection, you don't start to head the other way. You instead continue to go downward until you find that point of rejection. We may not see that point until we get to about 26.16. That's the next key level down, and it's also the next LVN down, and again, that sticks basically right with our storyline of price staying within these two key levels right here, which is basically the middle 50% of that larger key range. So we could be looking at further downside price discovery until we see the LVN tested, at which point perhaps we bounce back toward 27.03. Right now, just think of 27.03 as a magnet. Whenever price gets too far away from it, it's likely going to come back to that level. So right now we're continuing downward until we find some rejection, at which point we'll then bounce back, likely back toward 27.03. All right, let's take a look here at the NQ. The NQ looks very, very similar right now. As a matter of fact, what we're seeing is price basically continue downward, hunting lower a little bit here. We've had 4 down days in a row now, and we are approaching an LVN and the midpoint of that key range. And this is also just below the previous lows here as well. So we're coming into a point here where we could begin to see some rejection. And if we do see some rejection, perhaps we bounce back toward the previous month's close, which has been straight offered. So as soon as the month began here yesterday, we went offered. We're going to continue to go offered until we find rejection, at which point we may bounce back to the point of origination where that sell-off began. So again, right now on a downward path at the moment. Again, this is what I talked about here recently. Now that we're in this zone here, it doesn't really bode well for swing directional movements outside of a few days. You know, this thing can turn around and head back and have deep pullbacks back and forth and chop as we continue to trade around this area. But once we get to the edges, that's where some bigger plays, higher probability plays can occur. Right now we're in the midst of a 4-day down move. Whenever we find rejection, we might turn around and go 3 days up. So again, we could be looking at a bounce ahead. So as we continue to trade around this midpoint, we just got to be disciplined and patient, and eventually the high probability opportunities will present themselves. All right, taking a look here at gold futures. Here's a look at gold. One thing we talked about with gold was we were likely headed to the lower boundary of this trading range right here. This is after we said price was likely headed back up, and this is after price, you know, failed here and went down. So we've continued to be in this range for quite some time, basically the entire year. That's the beginning of the year. We've been in this range the entire year, which is fantastic because it gives you reliable edges to fade back and forth back toward value or the center portion of this range. Basically 1338 is that level. 1330 can also be that zone. So basically in that area, that's your high probability target with a fade across the range. And what we saw here over the last couple of days is a major rejection here below recent lows and into support, that 1305 to 1310 that we were targeting on the way down. Major rejection. And then what we were looking for, and we talked about this yesterday in the monthly market outlook for March. If you didn't get a chance to watch that live, then the recording has been posted. I'll show you where that is here in a moment. But a great session here where we talked about a lot of futures, stocks, crypto, and even went through a PivotBoss Masters tour of the dashboard, resources, etc. And basically what we talked about is this rejection was really nice, and what we're looking for is the open to be above the mid, and for any pullback here toward the mid to be defended for a continuation back up toward value, and then a shot to see a retest of these highs. And already we're seeing a little bit of strength here, higher lows, higher highs day over day. Tomorrow could still be or rather Sunday, Monday could still be an opportunity for price to be bought somewhere in this zone for a continuation. So over the next several days we could be looking at a bounce ahead, but this mid is very important. Price needs to stay above that zone, otherwise we're going to double dip and retest lows. So again, that gives us some really clear levels to watch for this opportunity. But for the most part, gold is actionable for a bounce back toward 1338 and perhaps even as high as 1362. But the entry could still be today, could be Monday. It just depends on how you want to engage this opportunity. But for the most part, this thing appears headed higher. Let's look at crude oil here. For crude oil, this one has seen quite a bit of action, especially on an intraday basis. The intraday volatility has been very, very good for crude. A lot of great action for the most part. We haven't seen a whole lot of directional movement outside of this center portion of the range. Once the impulse move was created, that is. Once that impulse move was created, we had a good shot at getting back to the mid. Once we did that, we thought we might stay somewhere in the middle, and we have. This is kind of what we've been talking about with the ES as well, right? It just bounced off the upper 25 and it's headed down toward the lower. And that's exactly what crude oil has done here as well. Trade right in that middle 50% of this key range. I call that a neutral key range, and that builds tons of energy for an eventual expansion phase, whichever way that goes. And so right now, with yesterday's rejection tail and price being below the mid, it doesn't bode well right now for bulls. It appears that the bulls are not able to maintain acceptance above the mid. That's 61s basically. 61 is kind of the key pivot on the intraday basis. Failing to hold that right now suggests more potential downside behavior here to below the recent lows. But again, this thing could continue to chop around here, and overall, if price can reclaim the previous month's close, that's when you may see a return back up toward recent highs. Otherwise, we could be looking at a retest of lows ahead. So right now, again, this one's looks like we may be headed a little bit lower unless prices can reclaim 61 and then 62. Okay, taking a look here at XBT. This is Bitcoin here. Again, Bitcoin has been really nice overall since the end of January, when it broke through 10K and dropped into our target. After hitting the target, there was a great rejection day and a rally straight to basically 12K. The first pullback toward 9K was defended. I mean, it's flowed very, very nicely. Now you see kind of an inverted or inverse head and shoulders that's developing. The main level to watch again continues to be 9K. Even just above it is a tinier LVN right here, but that's basically the major level that bulls need to continue to defend. If there is a violation of this down the road, that will lead to new lows and a retest of those lows below 6K. So that's a very important level. Now we could continue to see bounces off that level, but with each successive bounce, the odds increase for an eventual drop here. Same thing goes for the upper end. Above 12K opens up 16, so that's a big time level that bears are trying to keep a lid on right now, because if they give it up, there could be a run of the stops to the upside. All right, real briefly here, let's take a look at PivotBoss.com. You can click on this live training schedule real quick here, and for you all who are PivotBoss Masters members, you have a great schedule here that we're going to be implementing next week for our live training sessions. We're going to do market structure principles and concepts on Monday, advanced risk and portfolio management Tuesday, quantifying volatility with ADR on Wednesday, trading with FOMC key levels on Thursday, and on Friday we're going to be talking retraining your beliefs as a trader. Each of these will be held in the evening per your requests. We'll try that out this time instead of shortly after the close. But this is going to be a great session, and if you're not a member, you can click on this link right here. It's going to take you to this link right here. It's going to take you to a great offer. You can see bonus offer. You can click on this button. But right now, if you didn't already see yesterday's PivotBoss monthly outlook, it's right here in the sidebar. So on the tweets, basically it's going to be the second tweet down. Right now it's the first. You'll probably have to scroll down one, but the PivotBoss Monthly Outlook, it's right there. You'll also see it posted here pretty soon to the site, but if you didn't catch it, it's almost 2 hours, about an hour and 45 minutes of great content where we took a look at crypto, basically all the futures and a lot of great stocks. We also did a live tour of PivotBoss Masters. So again, take a look at those resources right there. A lot of great content. All right, that's it for now. Have a fantastic Friday, and I will see you soon. Trade well.